Bozos, it's Friday. You know what that means. It's time for another Friday video. Okay, now look, if you are already subscribed to the channel, then you know every Friday I tell you a little true crime story time, or sometimes it's like one of those longer, like almost like doc style things because my editors are crushing it. But I've noticed, I feel like so many people really like the obscure cases. Now, I've been a true crime fan for over 10 years, but back in my day, listen, I'm an old woman. Back in my day, we didn't have true crime YouTubers or true crime podcasts. It was just boring old Oxygen and Discovery ID and all that stuff. I mean, at the time, it was that Krenak that, you know, it's all we had, right? So, in turn, over the past decade, literally a decade, I've heard so many crazy cases that stuck with me, like emotionally, so sometimes I go back to them. Today's case is a 1989 with no photos. Look, y'all know I like adding in assets. I like the interrogations. I like the photos. You know, you want to be able to see the victim. You want to see the person that was involved, all that stuff. But y'all know, if I'm pulling up a story from 89 and I ain't got no pictures, it's crazy, okay? Now, I first heard of this case from a show called Homicide Hunter. It's a kind of an old episode, but it's season 4, episode 1, okay? And that gives you the full hour, you know, the whole research. Listen, here, this is true crime for people with ADHD. We don't got time for all that, okay? If you want to get more details, more research and everything on the case and actually hear it from the investigator, definitely check that out. But I wanted to share this story with you guys because I was like, I've never heard of this happening before, ever. Cory Edge was born December 31st, 1969. We don't have any photos of Cory, but, you know, it was said Cory was kind of a ladies' man. He had a lot of girls around him. They were always calling. He was like a little caramel skin king, you know. He was a boxer. He was a very successful boxer too, actually. He won the Golden Gloves Award, which is still around to this day. It's been around since the 1920s. It's for amateur boxing. Cory was super health conscious, super fit, had lots of friends. He had kind of a lot of girls that were looking after him. You know, Cory was a really popular guy. He had the whole look. He had the everything. And also, Cory Edge is a cool-ass name. That's a cool name. After he graduates high school, he goes all in on trying to be a professional boxer. And everyone says he has what it takes. In boxing, Cory was fine beating people's ass. Except, at one point, he did lose a fight for his life. Because on December 6th, 1989, a park ranger that was patrolling the area all week stumbles upon some neatly laid clothes outside in the forest. And he had been looking over this area the whole time. He had never seen these before, so he decides to go and investigate. Because to this park ranger, they're not just clothes. And also, I mean, park ranger early in the morning, homie's probably bored. He's like, whose t-shirt is this? He walks over to the pile of clothes and he approaches a body. It's a man, he looks a little bit younger, and he's wearing nothing but his underwear, but his clothes are right next to him. He calls the investigators, and they pick up the body, and they find that this person had suffered severe head trauma. And on top of that, they had been stabbed 24 times. Now, normally anything above, 10 or 20 stab wounds could mean like anger, like I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. But in this particular case, these were frenzied stab marks. When somebody is stabbing somebody, like killing them, sometimes they're kind of spread apart. There's a slower motion and in and out. But when you see a frenzied attack, that usually means die quickly, die quickly, die quickly, die quickly. And so investigators pick up on this because the method of stabbing can kind of give them a hint to the relationship between the victim and killer. Could this be a crime of passion? Was this a defense thing? Like, what is this? But first, investigators have to identify the body. Now, you and I know that this is Cory Edge. However, there's no wallet, there's no ID, there's no identifying things that point to like, a missing person. But they do find a piece of paper in his pocket, and there's a phone number. They call it, it's a beeper company. Cory Edge was so popular that his mom was like, I need you to stop having these girls calling the house phone. You need to get a beeper. Homie had a beeper in '89 for the ladies. He had just gone to the shop earlier that day, and they recognized him. So the beeper company was able to identify that man as Cory Edge. Now that they've identified the body, investigators need help. What happened? Who could have done this? So of course, they're going to talk to people closest to Cory Edge. So they talk to his brother Lamar. Lamar and his mother are absolutely devastated, and they try to give as much information to the police as possible. So the investigators speak to Cory Edge's mother. She says that the day that her son went missing, he had gone out around 2 o'clock to hang out with his friends, the Sanchez brothers. Investigators go and they talk to the Sanchez brothers, and they're super, super normal. They don't really have an alibi because they were home all night, and their parents were there, and their parents corroborated that, but they give the investigators as much information as possible. And they tell them that Cory was a drug dealer. That night they had gone out, had a good time, and gone to sleep in the basement. But then eventually Cory's beeper goes off and he says that he's got to go make a sale. He leaves and he never comes back to the Sanchez home. So now we've got an insane amount of suspects because we don't know who was buying. It could be anybody. They might have to search CCTV footage. They have to talk to more people. And then also, people don't want to snitch, and they don't want to talk about who's using drugs, right? Investigators have nowhere to go, and the case goes cold for 5 years. The murder of Cory Edge is never solved, which is probably terrifying for the residents because nobody knows how, when, or why they did that. So 5 years later, the case is still cold. And one day, the police department gets a call from the Sanchez brothers' father. And it has nothing to do with the case. It's been cold for years. They weren't involved, whatever. And there's a domestic dispute at their house. Remember how I said there were, 2 Sanchez brothers? It was Jason and Daryl Sanchez. Well, there's a third Sanchez brother, Ralph Sanchez. And he's here at the house, and he's causing some trouble. Daryl Sanchez Sr., the father, he had been attacked by Ralph, so he calls the police. They immediately pick him up, and Ralph is arrested for first-degree assault and attempted murder. I have no idea how bad this attack was, but Ralph was going nuts, okay? So he sits down, and these are some serious charges. These are serious. And they start talking about what happened. Look, this is just kind of a domestic case. They're gonna lock him up. The family's against Ralph at this point. He's just gonna go to jail, and that's it. Until he says, I can give you information about a murder. It really be your own. And the police are like, okay, tell me more. This happens all the time. People making shit up for a plea deal or, they just want to get out of something. So, they take him in the interrogation room, ready to record. Investigators tell him, if the information that you're giving us is accurate, we can help you with these charges. Now, you remember what I told y'all? Ralph done beat up the dad. He doesn't f with his brothers because they all threw him under the bus. And Ralph knows something. He tells investigators that his brothers, Daryl and Jason, killed Cory Edge that night. See, this was kind of a secret between the brothers. Jason and Daryl had told Ralph what happened that night in detail. So he tells the investigators everything that he knows from his brothers because they need to match those details to the crime scene. He says that on that night, Cory Edge went to the boys' house around 2 o'clock. Early in the day, they're just hanging out. They're 16, 18, 20. And the boys end up doing crack all day.
This is crack.
Because that's just what the plan is. Cory's dealing drugs, the Sanchez brothers want some crack, they're all hanging out. So they're in the basement doing drugs all day, and then that's why Cory Edge ended up falling asleep so early there. As Cory slept, the 2 boys decided that they wanted more drugs.
Rock cocaine.
And they know that Cory has them in his pocket. So they slowly creep up on him, and they try to reach into his pocket and just take the drugs. But Cory wakes up. Cory's got a little bit of a temper. He's a boxer, and he's not afraid to fight. So the minute that he sees what they're trying to do, Cory starts fighting back. He starts fighting both of these guys off, and I think that Cory was making some headway, and he was about to beat the snot out of these 2 people. So one of the brothers goes and grabs some kind of object to hit him on the back of the head, and he starts to hit Cory, and he collapses. I mean, what can he do? And then that's when another brother comes up and takes a knife and starts stabbing Cory. That's where we get that frenzied stabbing, because they were scared at this point. They were, of course, they're trying to steal these drugs from him. He's awake now. Their plan has foiled. So they start to stab Cory to kill him, get him away from them. I mean, you don't want to piss off a drug dealer and let them know that, you know, you just tried to steal their crack. Of course, this event is not quiet. So in the middle of the stabbings, the parents of the Sanchez brothers rush into the basement wondering what's going on, because my God, it couldn't be my two sons are killing somebody. But what do they open the door to? Cory Edge on his last limb, trying to crawl up the stairs, and their two sons, Daryl and Jason, standing over him, bloodied with knives. This is like a parent's worst nightmare. I don't even think they had time to process all of this. There's a murder happening in my house. My sons are covered in blood. Who is this guy? What is going on? So the mother immediately wants to call 911. We need to call 911. I feel like she didn't even process that her sons could have done it. She just sees the blood everywhere and somebody's dying. And then one of the Sanchez brothers says, no, Mom, don't call the police. Don't call the police. You don't know who he runs with. They tell their parents that if they report this murder, they will all be killed by the people that Cory's associated with. Now, that is probably not exactly true, because after somebody passes away like that, all the boys are not gonna, wrangle up and go kill the whole family or anything like that. They just said this because they wanted to get away with it. And what were their parents gonna do? They're scared of losing their sons. They're scared of dying themselves. They see this man die. They probably don't know what to do. But guess what they did? Daryl Sanchez Sr., the father, makes the decision for the entire family to help cover up the murder. He himself helped wrap Cory in a tarp with his two sons, and they put him in the car and they threw him out into the park. While that's happening, the mother was at the grocery store buying bleach, and then she went to another location to buy paint. I can't believe this. When I was kind of telling this at first, I was thinking for a second, like, oh no, what if you guys think like this isn't that interesting? This is a drug dealer thing. This is the part that gets me. I know this has happened in cases before, but this one really stuck with me. The entire family was down in the basement, all four of them, cleaning up the blood of the boy that had just spent the night at their house the night before. After that, they painted everything to try to seal up the blood. They cleaned that whole basement the next day. So when the cops showed up and they checked the downstairs and they interrogated the family, they were all ready to corroborate each other's stories. Right up until the moment, 5 years later, where Ralph Sanchez hit his dad and decided to turn his whole family in. Oh, God, yes! You guys know I love justice. Does anyone else love justice that much? Like, I don't know why, I just do. I'm like, take away the bad people! The thing about this story is, though, I don't really care too much about Daryl and, all of the Sanchez's sentencing. I want to know, did Ralph get his sentence reduced?